Hey, I'm Mr. Harvey, and this is GTT Flight and Space. So I have kids for 18 weeks or a semester, and every year or every semester I start with what's called GTT 101, and I spend a lot of time focusing on like cutting skills, measuring, how to use all the tools in the room, basic structures and systems, and you get out of that. It took about a week and a half. And then I will start with what I call Intro to Flight. And Intro to Flight is great because I realize that a lot of kids don't have a prerequisite knowledge or a lot of information on airplanes. They just know they get in an airplane, it takes off, and there's pilots. There's not a lot of background. So this project is great. And how I start the project is with a mini build or a mini assignment where I will do what's called balloon powered airplanes. And I'm really doing it for a few reasons. Number one is I want to start teaching some language that they'll eventually learn, but it sort of introduces it. So things like lift, things like thrust, things like drag and force and propulsion, words that they may have heard but don't know how to associate with flight. I can do it here in this section, and I can do it really easily. Another great element with starting with this is I can do a few things. Number one, I can reinforce the skills I just taught because they're going to do a very quick build. So if they've learned the ruler, if they've learned some of the utility knife skills, if they've learned some of the tool skills we've taught, I'll now know it with a little bit higher risk for them. It also allows me to start teaching with language that they've not heard yet. So again, that thrust and force and drag, I can start using these terms and they can start visually seeing them instead of just seeing them on paper, which they will eventually. Okay, so truth be told, some of the things I'm about to tell you I didn't do to start with because I didn't know I needed to, right? Some of the stuff's not out there. Some of the stuff's sort of generic when you're like looking up resources. So my hope that is when me sharing this is that you're actually able to make my ceiling your floor. So instead of having the mistakes I made and the struggles I had, you get to start over with a better way. So let's start with it. Number one is I actually will do limited supplies. So for this project, I really like using these. I pre-buy these 5x7 pieces of cardboard. They're really light and thin, and they're great. Now, I think another alternative is you could use like one sheet of cardstock. You could use one sheet of construction paper. I don't think that there is a rule or law that says you have to use the cardboard, but for me, it's a preference because I want them to use the utility knives. The second trick that I have for you is I will actually pre-make the body fuselage of their straw plane with the balloon. So like you can see that I use these thicker bubble straws, and then I just take balloons. I use the 12-inch balloons that blow up 12 inches, and then I wrap them with duct tape. It's really simple, but I pre-make these. And that sounds really easy and like, oh yeah, I should already be doing that. But the reality of it is so many teachers are like, oh, here's your balloon straw. And then they're frustrated that straws or balloons are flying around the room or that kids' mouths are on them or whatever. And that's gross. I never give kids the balloon. Okay, tip number 3 is I know every classroom is different. And so what I do is I actually take a piece of just nylon string and I attach it to 2 points in my room. And that can look different for every one of you, and that's okay. But the goal is just to go about 20 feet because then what I'll do is I'll take those same thick bubble straws and I will attach them on each end of the string. That way students can be working on either end and launching towards each other because the goal is that they're going about 10 feet. If they go more than 10 feet, that's fantastic. But realistically, they're going about 10 feet. So then what I'll do is I get my ruler out and I use a Sharpie and I go every 12 inches and I make a tick mark, right? I'm going down the line and make a tick mark. So they know the start point is 0. And then every time they go down the line, it's a foot. And then on their sheet that they have, they've designed on, they're also going to be graphing because I feel like that's a huge skill. And I have to teach a little bit about it, but they really need to understand how to graph. And the last piece of the string is I don't use hand pumps because the thicker straws, once you get the things built on it, becomes complicated. I really prefer the yellow bicycle pump straws with the thicker nozzle ends because they can just set them on there, they can pump, and they can go. Okay, so my last tip and trick here is that I recommend students design and build their plane so that it goes underneath the string. And here's what I mean. They're going to be tempted to have the straw that sits on the string, and then they're going to want to put it on top. They're going to want to pump it, and it's going to flip over. The most successful ones are when they have the straw that's on the string and they attach the body to the bottom so that it glides fast. It just is less resistance. It's a little bit better option. Now, they'll want to try the top and they can. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. This lesson is not necessarily about the successfulness of them going a far distance as much as it is about them learning the skills of how challenging it is to create lift and how much drag plays into flight. And so it's a great introduction. And I actually hope that this is a great resource for you. As you know, there's more information on my TPT store. I have a bunch of links below for you for the pumps I use, the straws I use, and all of that. But here, do me a favor. If you're doing this project, any of this stuff helps, tag me in some videos, shoot me an email, man. I'd love to see what you're doing in your class, because as an educator, my goal is not to get rich or do things off other people, but it's to make other teachers successful in their classrooms so that more students are interested in things like flight and space and engineering. So again, I'm Mr. Harvey, and this is GTT Flight and Space.